They watched us. For years they watched. From behind shimmering cloaks and silent satellites, from the cold edges of distant moons and the warm haze of gas giants, the galaxy observed Earth like you'd observe a storm through a glass window. Fascinated, maybe even a little afraid, but always at a distance. We were the strange ones, the unpredictable ones. A young species still clinging to a single planet, still arguing over lines in the dirt and the shape of ideas. To them, we were loud, chaotic, emotional, primitive. But the thing they remembered most about us, the thing that echoed across their networks and filled their quiet halls, was our patience. Because humanity, despite all its fire, had always waited. Waited while they approached our system like tourists through a wildlife reserve. Waited when they sent emissaries cloaked in smiles and diplomacy, offering us scraps of technology in return for data, samples, obedience. Waited as they politely explained that we weren't quite ready for membership in their so-called galactic community, that we lacked emotional maturity, that we were a threat to balance. And still, we waited. Through all of it, we played along, we traded, we listened, we adapted. We learned their languages, their customs, their way of doing things. Some of us even believed them, that maybe we weren't ready. Maybe it was a gift, this extended probation, a chance to grow. But others watched more closely. They saw the patterns in the trades, the subtle shifts in global markets, the way certain nations were nudged toward collapse while others rose mysteriously in power. They noticed the tech we were allowed to have and the much more dangerous tech we were kept from even knowing existed. And above all, they noticed the quiet disappearances. Scientists, soldiers, thinkers, people who got too close to certain truths or refused to play along. And still, we waited. Because that's what we do best, isn't it? Humans endure. We absorb the hit. We take the insult. We let them think we don't understand. And we wait. But the thing about patience, the thing they forgot, is that it isn't weakness. It's pressure. Building. Silent. Controlled. Until it's not. The moment it snapped, it didn't look like a declaration of war. There were no great speeches. No warnings. It was quieter than that. Colder. It began with a station, not one of ours. A diplomatic hub orbiting a neutral world, known for its peaceful assemblies and centuries of interspecies treaties. A place where humans had always tread lightly, always spoken carefully, always been reminded, subtly and not so subtly, that they were guests, temporary participants in a much older conversation. Then one day, a cargo vessel, registered under a minor Terran shipping guild, docked at the station. Routine. Cleared through standard checks. Crew list clean. Manifests normal. 12 hours later, the station went dark. No distress call. No escape pods. No signs of life. By the time the investigation teams arrived, they found only silence. Not destruction. Absence. The kind that prickles the back of your neck. The kind that says whatever did this wasn't trying to send a message. But the message was clear anyway. The council panicked, of course. Not openly. That would have been too human. But their security protocols tripled. Patrols rerouted. Talks postponed. Quiet meetings held behind locked doors. And always, in the shadows of those meetings, one question. Was it the humans? They didn't want to believe it. We weren't supposed to be capable of something like that. Not us, the emotional children of the stars. And yet, who else had motive? Who else had waited so long under their thumb, only to start slipping out of reach? Because by then, we were changing. Our ships weren't just faster. They were different, built with tech that didn't match the specs we'd been given. Our colonies on Mars, Europa, Titan, they'd gone quiet too. But not in fear, in purpose. Communications became shorter, coded, private. We stopped asking to join, and that's when the galaxy began to feel it. The slow, terrifying realization that we'd stopped playing their game. That all the time they thought we were being taught, being controlled. We were simply learning and adapting. They say the next strike was even quieter. A minor outpost belonging to a species that had long worked with the Council, a race of scholars, more digital than physical, who'd once declared that humanity's greatest contribution would be its music and nothing more. One morning, their entire data network collapsed. Not corrupted, erased. Thousands of years of knowledge, gone. Their cities dimmed, their skies filled with smoke. No bodies were ever found. By now it was undeniable. We weren't just reacting, we were responding, not with fleets or invasions, but with precision, with intent. Not a war of conquest, but something worse. A reckoning. Because here's what the galaxy never understood. We didn't want to rule. We didn't want to control them. We wanted to be left alone. We wanted respect. And when it became clear that the only way to get it was to take it, well, that's when humanity's patience finally ran out. Now every species remembers where they were when it happened. Not the attacks, the moment, the shift. That chilling realization that the quiet, waiting species from Earth had stopped waiting. Some say it was a whisper that started it. A simple phrase repeated across hidden comms, passed from ship to ship, bunker to bunker, like a spark in dry grass. Now. No roar, no fanfare, just that. Now. And the galaxy would never be the same. But the truth? The real beginning didn't happen out there in the stars. It started in a lab, on Earth, with one scientist, one question, and one discovery that changed everything. A discovery that, if they'd let us share it, might have united us all. But they didn't. They took it. They buried it. And in doing so, they lit the fuse. You want to know what happened next? Stay tuned. It wasn't meant to be a weapon. That's the part nobody understands. Not the Council, not the other species, not even most of us. The thing that started all of this, that shifted us from quiet observers to something the galaxy now fears, it was never designed to harm anyone. It was a cure. A young researcher, anonymous now, scrubbed from every official record, had been working on something buried deep beneath the main facility in what used to be called South America. A forgotten research hub tucked into the side of an old mountain range, mostly used for low-priority bioengineering trials. Quiet work, no attention, which made it perfect. The project was focused on neural decay, a degenerative condition that had started spreading slowly among older generations in the off-world colonies. It wasn't contagious, wasn't terminal, just erasing. Little by little. Language, memory, identity. Most thought it was a side effect of extended time in lower gravity or isolated domes. Others suspected something else. This researcher, though, they dug deeper. Ran tests nobody else had the patience for. Noticed things in brainwave patterns that didn't belong. At first they thought it was just interference, static. But the signals were structured, intentional. They weren't natural. The breakthrough came when they isolated the signal, hidden beneath layers of neurological data like dust pressed into an old painting. It wasn't just noise, it was a kind of control pattern, subtle, deliberate, not mind control exactly, more like a filter, a quiet dimming, a long, slow manipulation. Someone or something had been interfering with human cognition, not to dominate us, but to dull us, and it had been going on for decades. The pattern wasn't present in any humans who had stayed on Earth their whole lives. Only in those who had lived off-world for extended periods. Mars, Europa, the outer colonies. And when the pattern was fully decoded, it matched another signal, one found in the communications network used by the diplomatic liaison teams. Alien tech, masked behind friendly translation programs. We'd invited them in, and they'd been tuning us ever since. When the researcher tried to escalate the discovery, everything happened fast. The lab was sealed, their research deleted, backups erased, witnesses reassigned or simply disappeared. Standard protocol for security breaches. But by then, The data was already out, fragmented, encrypted, buried in the no man's land of old EarthNet relay servers, passed hand to hand by a quiet network of people who had long suspected something wasn't right. The underground knew, and that changed everything. That's when the quiet parts of humanity started pulling away. Not the governments, not yet, but the thinkers, the builders, the ones who understood the implications. Small colonies began losing contact. Research stations went dark, but not destroyed, repurposed into something new. That's when they began building the real ships, not the ones they let the galaxy see, the diplomatic vessels, the escorted freighters, the other ones, human-designed, human-built, with no alien systems, purely Terran code, shielded, silent, fast, and more importantly, hidden. The mistake the other species made was thinking humanity needed their technology, that without it, we were behind. But what they never counted on, what they never even considered, is that we learn fast. And more than that, we adapt better than anything they've seen. We took what they gave us, broke it down, rebuilt it, improved it, and we never showed our full hand. By the time the first station went dark, we already had fleets. Not large ones, but enough. Enough to hit quietly. Enough to vanish afterward. And most importantly, enough to send a message that no one could trace back with certainty. Because that was the new human doctrine. No more asking. No more begging to be seen as equals. If respect couldn't be given, it would be taken. The Council called it terrorism. Unprovoked aggression. That part stung, at least for a while, because humans still wanted to be understood, even if they no longer needed approval. But when the first retaliations came, harsh, brutal, and without distinction, that's when everything sharpened. A small Earth-based research outpost, peaceful and fully compliant, was bombed from orbit by a coalition patrol. They claimed it was a suspected military front. There were no survivors. That's when the line was crossed. From then on, the underground wasn't underground anymore. It became something else. A network, yes, but also a mindset, a culture, a quiet oath passed from engineer to soldier to scientist. The words varied, but the meaning was always the same. Never again. Never again would humanity ask for permission to survive. Never again would we allow another hand on the switch that controlled our future. But even within humanity, there were fractures. Some still believed in diplomacy, believed that not all species were involved, that it was just a few council powers manipulating the rest. And maybe they were right. Maybe. But the others, the ones who'd seen too much, who had friends lost in quiet disappearances, who saw the manipulation of minds as an act of war. They weren't waiting for answers anymore. They were already preparing for what came next. At the heart of it all was the signal, the corrupted neural pattern. That's what proved everything, and that's what they were trying hardest to bury. But fragments kept resurfacing. Pirate radio broadcasts, glitched transmissions on dead channels, even strange patterns in music files. The signal became a ghost story, a myth, but a dangerous one. Because if it ever went fully public, if every human saw it for what it really was, then there'd be no turning back. And that's why they came for the Earth labs again. Not to destroy them this time, but to control them, to reestablish oversight, to partner with our scientists again, to rebuild trust. But they were too late. By then, Earth had already changed, quietly, slowly, but completely. The cities still functioned. The people still smiled. The officials still gave their carefully worded statements about peace and progress. But beneath that calm, something else had taken root. Every sector had its shadow, every ship its hidden protocols, every research team its silent backups. The surface stayed calm, but the core had hardened. And the worst part, the part the galaxy hasn't figured out yet, is that humanity still hasn't attacked. Not really. A few stations, a data core here, a fleet gone missing there, nothing big. Nothing they can call war. Not yet. But it's coming. Because we're done waiting. And in the silence before the storm, one question still hangs in the air. Who else knew about the signal? Who helped install it? And when the last pieces are uncovered, when we find the names, the coordinates, the hands behind the strings, will there be anyone left to apologize? The answer to that? Well, it's coming. It wasn't just about the signal anymore. At first, it had been. That hidden pattern, that quiet interference in the minds of off-world humans. It was the match that lit the fire. But now, the flames were spreading in directions no one could fully control. What started as a response to manipulation had become something far more complex, more dangerous. Humanity wasn't unified. Not really. Not in the way the Council feared. There were factions now, and each believed in a different kind of future. On one side were the purists, born mostly in the inner colonies, places like Mars and Ganymede, where the early settlers had been closest to the interference, where the neural dampening had done the most damage. They were angry. Some of them hadn't felt fully awake for years. They viewed the signal as an act of war, plain and simple, a violation not just of trust, but of identity. To them, diplomacy was dead, and anything less than total independence from every alien system, language, tech, trade, was surrender. Then there were the reclaimers, Earth-based mostly, scientists, strategists, historians. They didn't want revenge, they wanted understanding. Their focus was on uncovering how deep the manipulation had gone, how far back it started, who had approved it, and whether it was isolated or part of a much larger design. They were the ones tracking the shadow history, the false treaties, the buried experiments, the names of human collaborators who had traded long-term sovereignty for short-term gains. They weren't looking to destroy the galactic order. They wanted to expose it. And then there were the ghosts. No one really knew where they came from. Some said they were survivors of the first erased station. Others believed they were ex-council operatives turned against their own. They didn't give interviews, didn't speak publicly. Their attacks were surgical, precise. They left no messages, no symbols, just silence and fear. Every time a remote listening array went offline without warning, every time a supply route flickered and died mid-transit, someone whispered, "Ghosts." No one claimed them, but no one tried to stop them either. While the factions disagreed, one thing united them. Humanity was done being the experiment. The Council still tried to regain control. They sent envoys, offered apologies that didn't feel like apologies, promised transparency, access to technology once kept secret, even suggested forming a new human-led advisory board. It was too late, because the truth had already begun leaking into the cracks. In deep orbit above Saturn, a listening post, manned by a joint human council crew, intercepted a transmission that changed everything. It was old, corrupted, barely readable. But what survived was enough. A voice, not human, not one of the known species, speaking in a language that matched no council records. Then a translated line, auto-generated by the station's archive software. Begin Phase 2. Earth frame is compliant. No timestamp, no location. Just that phrase. Earth frame. That was the name of the earliest human space communication grid, built long before first contact. Before we even knew we weren't alone, which meant they'd been watching us longer than we thought, maybe even shaping us from the beginning. The reclaimers jumped on the data. So did the purists. Even the ghosts seemed to react. 2 weeks later, a deep space archive station controlled by the Council was found completely stripped, not destroyed, emptied. Files, cores, drives, gone. The signal, it turned out, was just the tip of the blade. Underneath it all, a deeper pattern began to emerge. Not just control, but testing. Humanity hadn't just been manipulated. We'd been measured. Our decisions, our conflicts, our rate of technological growth. how fast we adapted, how long it took us to forget. It wasn't a war, it was a study. And the worst part? Some of our own had helped run it. The names started showing up in old records, scientists with early access to alien data, diplomats who suddenly vanished from public life, even cultural leaders who had quietly encouraged certain narratives. Peace at any cost, unity without question, trust over truth. The betrayal hit hard. Earth's leadership, the public-facing one at least, scrambled to manage the fallout. They held press conferences, blamed rogue elements, promised investigations. But the people weren't listening anymore. Cities changed. Overnight, old monuments came down. Streets were renamed. Networks once open to galactic media were shut off, rerouted through human-only proxies. Even entertainment shifted. No more alien films. No more council-approved documentaries about shared growth. The mood changed. And in that tense quiet, another mystery surfaced. A deep-ice drilling operation in Antarctica, routine, civilian, nothing to do with space, struck something it couldn't explain. Not a natural structure, not even something buried. It was broadcasting, faintly, repeating one phrase. Human system anomaly, reset pending. That phrase repeated every 88 seconds. Identical transmission. It wasn't human code, but it was talking about us. Earth wasn't just under observation. It was tagged. The reclaimers begged for time. They wanted to study it, understand who or what had placed it there. The purists demanded it be destroyed immediately. They claimed it was the anchor, the original node from which the signal spread. The ghosts said nothing. But 3 days later, the site went dark. No footage, no official explanation, just silence. And then, 3 weeks after that, on the anniversary of the first erased station, every human device connected to legacy Earth-frame networks displayed the same thing. An eye. Just an eye. Not human, not threatening, watching, no message, no sound. And then it was gone. People are still arguing about what it meant. Was it a warning, a glitch, a sign that someone, somewhere, was ready to activate Phase 2? No one knows. But the fear that followed wasn't fear of invasion. It was fear that we still didn't know how deep it went. And for the first time, people started asking the hardest question. What if it wasn't just about manipulation? What if we were built this way? What if human history, our wars, our inventions, our culture, even our instincts, had been nudged again and again from the very beginning? And if that was true, what happens when we push back against our own design? The factions moved underground again, not out of fear, but strategy. Plans were shifting, sides forming, not just humans versus aliens now. It was humans versus the idea of what humanity had always been told to be. And as the second phase loomed, whatever that truly meant, there was a growing understanding among the scattered human networks, whispered across encrypted channels, drawn into silent tattoos, etched into the hulls of hidden ships. The real war hadn't started yet, but it was coming. And this time, we weren't going to wait. In the weeks that followed the signal on every screen, humanity stopped pretending. Governments still functioned on the surface, satellites still orbited, traffic flowed, and morning broadcasts played the usual blend of news and distraction. But underneath that thin film of normalcy, the planet buzzed with the hum of preparation. Hidden launch bays activated, subterranean networks came online, shipyards buried beneath oceans started moving with purpose. Across every continent, humanity was getting ready. Not for war in the traditional sense, not for marching armies or public declarations. This was something colder, tighter, the kind of readiness that comes when you've been waiting for the other shoe to drop for too long. The factions weren't separate anymore, not entirely. The purists, the reclaimers, and the ghosts had begun working in strange sync, not because they agreed, but because the enemy had finally revealed enough to unite them. A third transmission was intercepted, this time from the edge of human space, near a dark zone long thought to be uninhabited. A ghost ship had gone missing there 2 months earlier. No distress beacon, no wreckage, just gone. The signal was buried in the carrier wave of a drifting probe recovered from that same region. It was short, just 4 words. Protocol active. Observe resistance. That was the turning point. Because now the theory wasn't just theory anymore. Humanity wasn't just being watched. It was being tested. The neural dampening had been step 1, the false diplomacy, step 2. And whatever came next, it was the final part of some ancient process, one none of us had agreed to participate in. The Earth frame signal had returned too, not on public channels, but in whispers across high-frequency bands. You could pick it up if you knew where to aim your dish. Every 8 hours, the same pulse, the same phrase. Reset pending. The reclaimers were convinced Earth itself had been tagged, marked like a file to be deleted or rewritten. They scoured old code archives, broadcast histories, even pre-contact satellite records, looking for signs that Earth had been designated as some kind of test bed species, experimental, disposable. The purists didn't care about theories. They were preparing countermeasures, real, physical ones. Massive signal jammers disguised as energy farms, kinetic defense platforms in lunar orbit, whole fleets of unregistered stealth ships. Nothing flashy, no shields, no flashy weapons, just hard-hitting, purpose-built machines, purely human. And the ghosts, they disappeared entirely. No one heard from them for weeks. No sightings, no rumors, nothing. Until they came back. In the middle of an off-world transmission blackout, a silent feed cut into a live council meeting. No warning, just a static-filled image of a ruined planet, gray, lifeless, cratered. Not Earth, but familiar. Then a single sentence appeared beneath it, translated instantly into every council language. "This is your future if you continue." And just like that, the feed cut. The council panicked. Not openly, they never do, but protocols shifted. Their ships began running hotter, escort units doubled. The slow crawl of their peacekeeping patrols near human territory suddenly turned into avoidance. But the damage was already done. The fear had set in. Not just in the council, but among the other species too. Because for the first time in galactic memory, the humans weren't asking questions. They weren't petitioning for inclusion. They weren't trying to explain themselves. They were moving. And the unknown always terrifies the powerful. Then came the most chilling piece of information yet. One of Earth's deep station AI systems, long thought offline, woke up without explanation. It had been dark since the early 2100s. Buried beneath the remains of an abandoned orbital elevator project. When it came back online, it had only one file in active memory, an ancient log predating first contact, a transcript of a conversation between an early AI architect and an unknown voice, logged during a system anomaly. The voice asked one question: "When they reach awareness, will you help them?" The human voice had replied, "Yes, if they let us." There was no record of that exchange anywhere else, no indication of who or what the second voice had been. But the timing aligned too closely with the Earth frame signal activation to be ignored. That's when the reclaimers changed their stance. They stopped talking about exposure and began preparing for defense, because if something was coming to reset us, if we were just a step in someone else's process, they needed to stop it. Earth wasn't just in danger. It was on the edge of being erased. And that's when the ghosts struck again. Not a station this time, not a ship, a council world. One of the outer ring civilizations, a peaceful, science-focused race, woke up to find every piece of their communication infrastructure disabled. Not destroyed, just silenced. Entire data cores wiped clean, satellites realigned to stare directly at Earth. No trace of violence, no dead, just silence and direction. The message was clear. Stay out of it. Humanity wasn't playing the game anymore. The global networks, what was left of them, stopped pretending to filter the truth. Live streams leaked. Whistleblowers uploaded real-time scans. Millions watched as Earth's greatest mystery surfaced into full view. But then, something unexpected happened. The Council fleet, still holding position beyond Pluto, pulled back. Not far, but enough to signal hesitation. Their containment directive had been absolute. But now, they were waiting. That's when the second twist dropped, and it wasn't from space. It came from beneath us. We were part of something else's test, and the Council had just realized they weren't in control. Panic swept through the higher ranks of every alien power involved. Some species tried to distance themselves immediately. Others demanded proof. The Council scrambled for clarity, but their own systems started glitching. Core archives locked themselves. Ships froze mid-transit. Access denied. One fleet flagship even turned its weapons inward before power was cut. Whatever had been watching Earth, it wasn't just inside us. It was inside them too. And no one knew what that meant. But the gateway did. One night, just past midnight UTC, the sky over the Pacific tore open. Not literally, no atmospheric rupture, no explosion, just light. A vertical beam reaching into the stars. No heat, no energy signature that instruments could detect. But every biological system on Earth, plant, animal, human, felt it. Like a pulse, or a summons. And people started walking, from homes, from stations, from bunkers, toward the coast, quietly. No panic, just motion, as if something inside them had been unlocked. Military forces tried to intervene, then stood down. Orders were given, then retracted. Whole chains of command broke apart as soldiers laid down their arms, overwhelmed by the same instinct. The reclaimers called it the pull. The purists called it mind control. The truth was somewhere in between, because whatever was inside that gateway, whatever had built it, was calling us home. Or maybe calling us forward. And as the council debated whether to fire, whether to act, before humanity stepped through whatever door had just opened, their systems locked again, not by us, but by the same force that had hidden itself in our past, the unknown, the silent architect, It had watched long enough, and now it was watching them. And somewhere, deep in the heart of the Pacific, where the last pillar rose, a figure stepped through. Not human, not alien, familiar, as if we'd known it in dreams we forgot, in myths we dismissed, in DNA we never understood. It looked up at the sky, then down at Earth, and smiled. No words, no message, just a gesture, a hand raised in invitation, and the world held its breath. The figure standing at the edge of the rising gateway was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. Its form shimmered with a light that wasn't quite solid, as if it existed between moments, both there and not. Its eyes, deep and calm, held the weight of eons, yet carried a strange kindness, a familiarity that stirred something buried deep in every human soul watching. For a long moment, nothing happened. The world held its breath, waiting for a sign, a warning, or a threat. Then the figure raised its hand, not in aggression, but in peace. A simple gesture, but enough to still the rising tide of fear that had gripped humanity and the Council alike. The transmissions from Earth, from the gateway, from the moon, all synchronized in a single broadcast, a voice both alien and human. It spoke directly into the hearts of every listener. You have passed the test. You have awakened. You are no longer the subjects of observation. You are architects of your own destiny. The shockwaves from that message rippled instantly. The Council's ships held their fire, the fleets hesitated, and the factions on Earth slowly lowered their weapons. The purists, the reclaimers, and even the ghosts paused, recognizing at last that this moment was the culmination of everything they had fought for, feared, and hoped. The figure, no longer distant or abstract, stepped fully into the light of day. Its form solidified into something almost human, yet transcendent. It revealed itself as the culmination of a civilization older than the Council, a race that had long since transcended physical form, but chose to guide the younger species it had nurtured. This being was a guardian, an ancient caretaker designed to shepherd emerging civilizations through their trials, to ensure they would not destroy themselves or be destroyed by the cosmic forces that lurked beyond. The gateway was not a weapon. It was a passage, a bridge to the next stage of existence, a test not of strength or violence, but of will, unity, and purpose. Humanity had passed, not because of perfect harmony, but because of resilience and the ability to choose. But as relief and hope began to spread, the unexpected happened. The gateway pulsed again, this time not with invitation, but warning. The ancient guardian's eyes darkened, and its voice dropped to a grave tone. You have passed the threshold, but your true challenge begins now. From the depths of the gateway emerged a shadow, vast and terrible, a presence that seemed to consume light itself. It was the reason for the tests, the reason civilizations were observed and measured. A force older than the stars, a cosmic entity that devours worlds, civilizations, and entire histories, resetting the cosmic balance to prevent chaos. The reset-pending message wasn't a threat from the Council, but a countdown to this entity's arrival. The Guardian explained that the Council, the manipulations, the experiments, were all efforts to prepare species like humanity to face this cosmic reckoning. Some failed, some passed, but few survived intact. Earth was the first to reach this stage openly, and now all eyes were on humanity to see if they could stand. The factions, once divided, found themselves forced into alliance. The purists' warriors combined with the reclaimers' strategists and scientists, and the ghosts' shadow operatives, coordinating a desperate defense. The Council, humbled and fearful, offered their support. Ships from countless species gathered in a protective formation around Earth, ready to face annihilation alongside humanity. The battle was unlike any before. The cosmic entity didn't attack with conventional weapons. Instead, it warped reality around itself, distorting space and time, turning light into shadow, hope into despair. Humanity responded not with brute force, but with unity. Scientists and engineers tapped into the ancient gateway's technology, merging human innovation with alien wisdom. They created a network of energy pulses designed to disrupt the entity's influence, carving safe zones in the chaos. Soldiers and civilians alike fought together, not just to survive, but to prove they deserved to keep their future. Amid the battle, the ancient guardian stayed by humanity's side, guiding, teaching, reminding them of what had been learned. In a final, desperate move, the factions combined their resources to activate the gateway fully, opening a bridge not just to another place, but to a new understanding of existence itself. The cosmic entity hesitated, its form flickering as it encountered something beyond destruction, a force of creation and choice. And then, with a blinding surge of light, the entity recoiled and withdrew, not destroyed, but held at bay by humanity's newfound strength and unity. The cost was high. Cities lay in ruins, millions had been lost, and the scars of battle would mark the planet forever. But Earth stood. Humanity was free, no longer subjects of an experiment, but masters of their own fate. As the dust settled, the ancient guardian prepared to leave. "You have earned your place in the cosmos," it said softly. "But remember, freedom is a journey, not a destination." Just as it began to fade, a sudden flicker disrupted the calm. The gateway pulsed once more, but this time the pattern was different, a signal within the signal. The guardian paused, its form flickering with uncertainty. "Another threshold," it whispered. "Another cycle begins." Before anyone could react, the gateway emitted a pulse so intense it reshaped the sky itself. Then silence. Humanity had survived the test, but the universe still held secrets deeper than anyone had imagined. The story wasn't over. It was only just beginning. The light from the gateway slowly faded, casting long shadows over a world forever changed. The ocean that had once boiled with unnatural energy now calmed, its surface reflecting the stars as if nothing had happened. But everyone knew better. Humanity had been tested, pushed to the brink, and had emerged stronger. The battles were over, for now, but the echoes of what had transpired rippled far beyond the shores of Earth. The ancient guardian's departure left a void, but also a spark. Its final words lingered in the minds of every human who had witnessed the ordeal. Freedom was a journey, not a destination. It was a reminder that survival wasn't the end goal, but the beginning of something far greater. And for the first time, humanity wasn't just reacting to the universe. They were ready to shape their own path within it. Across the world, the factions that had once been bitter rivals found new reasons to come together. The purists lowered their arms, not out of defeat, but because they realized that survival demanded unity, not division. The reclaimers shared their knowledge, bridging old gaps with science and technology born from the gateway's secrets. The ghosts re-emerged from the shadows, their purpose no longer to sabotage or hide, but to protect what had been won through sacrifice and determination. Governments and leaders, once fractured and distrustful, began to weave a new fabric of cooperation. The Council, humbled by the close brush with annihilation, extended an unprecedented offer of alliance and support. Humanity was no longer just an experiment or a curiosity. It was a valued member of a broader cosmic community. Yet, with that recognition came responsibility. Scientists dove deeper into the gateway's technology, revealing layers of complexity that hinted at knowledge far beyond human understanding. The lessons of the past became the foundation for a new era of exploration, innovation, and hope. The ancient signals, once terrifying, now served as guides to unlock potential hidden within Earth and within ourselves. But the experience also left humanity with hard questions. What was the cosmic entity truly? Was it an enemy or a force of balance necessary in the grand design? What other thresholds awaited beyond the ones already crossed? These mysteries remained unsolved, a reminder that the universe was vast and often unfathomable. Yet, in the face of uncertainty, people found strength in their shared humanity. The dreams that had once been fragmented by fear were now threads weaving a common future. Families rebuilt, communities healed, and the scars of conflict became stories of resilience passed from generation to generation. The lessons of the Gateway extended beyond technology and cosmic tests. They were lessons about patience, courage, and the power of choice. Humanity had stood at the edge of extinction and, instead of breaking, had reached inward and upward. The true victory was in that transformation. As days turned to months, the world embraced a cautious optimism. The skies were clearer, but the stars held new meaning. They were no longer distant points of light, but symbols of the vast potential waiting to be explored. Human ships prepared for journeys beyond the solar system, carrying the hopes of a species ready to claim its place among the stars. The final twist, the hidden pulse within the Gateway's last message, remained a secret for now. It was a quiet hum beneath the surface, a reminder that while one chapter had closed, another awaited. The universe had opened a door, and humanity had stepped through, but the journey was far from over. In quiet moments, people looked up at the night sky and felt a connection deeper than before. A sense that despite all the unknowns, humanity was no longer alone or powerless. The patience had snapped, yes, but it had also awakened something vital, a spark of defiance, hope, and unity that no force could erase. This was the moment history would remember, not just as a battle for survival, but as the birth of a new era. One where no species would forget the day humanity chose to stand tall, to face the darkness, and to embrace the light within themselves. And as the stars shone down, the world whispered a promise: we will keep moving forward, because that is what it means to be human.